Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hi, good morning. This is me, Praveen Fernandez, and this today is episode 2 of Shakespeare Sunday. So, today we'll be discussing my most favorite play of Shakespeare, that is Julius Caesar. I think I said in the last video that if you are a 12th grader and if you're watching this, then of course you must have read about this play in your English test. And yeah, this could be an information and educational video for all you students out there. So yeah, let's get on with the video. If you're wondering if Julius Caesar is a fictional character in the play made by or fabricated by William Shakespeare, then you're wrong. Julius Caesar actually a historical, he's a Roman general and he's a statesman, and this play is actually based on real life events and it is verified as well. So as we go through this play, let me first talk a little bit about Julius Caesar. So he was born in July in 100 BCE and he died on March 15th, and he was assassinated by his own friends. Caesar changed the course of the history of Greco-Roman world decisively and irreversibly. The Greco-Roman society has been extinct for so long, and most of the names of its great men, maybe they are little to average, but Caesar's name, like Alexander the Great, is still on people's lips, even though they don't know who Julius Caesar is. But the name Caesar has a very huge impact on people. So if you want a short summary of Julius Caesar, then jealous conspirators convince Caesar's friend, that is Brutus, to join their assassination plot against Caesar to stop Caesar from gaining too much power. The Brutus and the conspirators, they kill him in March, or the Ides of March as it is called. Mark Antony drives the conspirators out of Rome using a speech, and he fights them in a battle. Brutus and his friend Cassius, they lose and they kill themselves or commit suicide, and they leave Antony and Brutus' great nephew, that is Octavius Caesar, to rule in Rome. Act 1. The tribunes of Rome, Marcellus and Flavius, break up a gathering of citizens who want to celebrate Julius Caesar's triumphant return from war. The victory is marked by public games in which Caesar's protege Mark Antony takes part. On his way to the arena, Caesar is stopped by a stranger who warns him that he should beware the Ides of March. Fellow senators Caius, Cassius, and Marcus Brutus are suspicious of Caesar's reaction to the power he holds in the Republic. They fear he will accept offers to become emperor. He has been gaining a lot of power recently, and people treat him like a god. Cassius, a successful general himself, is jealous of Caesar. Brutus has a more balanced view of the political position. The conspirator, Casca, enters and tells Brutus of a ceremony held by the plebeians. They offer Caesar a crown 3 times, and he refused it every time. But the conspirators are still wary of his aspirations. Act 2. Cassius, Casca, and their allies planned false documents to manipulate Brutus to join their cause to remove Caesar. After doing so, they visit Brutus at night in his home to persuade him of their views. There, they plan Caesar's death. Brutus is troubled but refuses to confide in his devoted wife Portia. On 15th March, Caesar's wife Calpurnia urges him not to go to the Senate. She has had visionary dreams and fears the portents of the overnight storms. Act 3. Caesar is nevertheless persuaded by flattery to go to the capital. At the capital, he is stabbed by each conspirator in turn. As Brutus gives the final blow, Caesar utters the famous phrase, "Et tu, Brute." Against Cassius' advice, Brutus allows Mark Antony to speak a funeral oration for Caesar in the marketplace. He is allowed under the condition that first Brutus must address the people to explain the conspirators' reasons and their fears for Caesar's ambition. After Brutus speaks, the crowd becomes calm and supports his cause. However, Antony, in his speech, questions the motives of the conspirators and reminds the crowd of Caesar's benevolent actions and of his refusal to accept the crown. He also reads them Caesar's will, in which Caesar leaves public land and money to each Roman citizen. Antony's speech stirs the crowd into a murderous riot, and the conspirators are forced to flee from the city. Act 4. Brutus and Cassius gather an army in northern Greece and prepare to fight the forces led by Mark Antony. Antony has joined with Caesar's great nephew Octavius and with a man named Lepidus. Away from Rome, Brutus and Cassius are filled with doubts about the future and quarrel over funds for their soldiers' pay. After making amends, they prepare to engage Antony's army at Philippi, despite Cassius' misgivings about the site. Brutus stoically receives news of his wife's suicide in Rome. He then sees Caesar's ghost as he tries to rest and is unable to sleep on the eve of the conflict. Act 5. In the battle, the Republicans, led by Brutus, appear to be winning at first, but when Cassius' messenger's horse seems to be overtaken by the enemy, Cassius fears the worst and gets his servant to help him to a quick death. After finding Cassius' body, Brutus commits suicide. He believes this to be the only honorable option left to him. Antony, triumphant on the battlefield, praises Brutus as the noblest Roman of them all and orders a formal funeral before he and Octavius return to rule in Rome. The end. Talking about Mark Antony's speech, the purpose of Antony's speech was to instigate the mob and against the conspirators for killing Caesar through swaying them with basic sentiments. He was really sarcastic. At first he was like, Brutus and the conspirators, they're actually right. They're great men. They're honorable men. He keeps saying that repeatedly. But then he questions their ideals as to why they killed Julius Caesar. And he succeeds in his mission to turn the mob against the conspirators, and the conspirators have to flee Rome, which eventually ends in their demise and in their deaths. Antony's speech is very effective because it is genuine, it is full of emotions and feelings for Caesar. He very clearly tells the crowd that Caesar was not ambitious, rather he had refused the crown thrice. He enhanced the glory of Rome with his victories. In the first episode of Shakespeare Sundays, I had mentioned how Macbeth, he was grief-stricken when he killed King Duncan. And later on in the dinner party, you can see that he could see Duncan's ghost in the dinner party. And he was very, very grief-stricken and he was filled with guilt. In the same way, in this play, after Brutus and the conspirators, they kill Julius Caesar, they assassinate him. Brutus in a dinner party, he can also see Shakespeare's ghost in the dinner party. So this is one recurring theme that Shakespeare uses in all his plays, that is to show the guilt of the murderer or the criminal. They show that the criminal or the murderer, they have a little bit of guilt or they have a little bit of emotions. See, that is what we need in our real life. In real life, people, they have zero guilt of what they do. They have literally no idea how much pain they cause to people. So in real life, we actually need a little bit of guilt, a little bit of understanding of what we have done or what we may have done to people. So, as we finish with the small summary of the play, now I would like to discuss the themes of the play. So, the first theme is heroes versus villains. One of the major themes of Julius Caesar's concerns on how to distinguish between heroes and villains. Caesar and Brutus inadvertently compete for it, where one seems other and vice versa. Caesar becomes a hero for his performance in battle and in his humble way of refusing the crown 3 times. On the other hand, Brutus terms himself as an ambitious person who is not fit to be a hero. Brutus' speech after they have killed him paints Caesar as a villain rather than a hero. Theme is omens. The significance of omens in Roman society at the time portrayed in the play is another major theme. Shakespeare has shown Romans believing strongly in omens and interpreting their fates through those signs and symbols. However, the elite class often ignores such signs and berates the plebeians for this ignorance. When the soothsayer tells Caesar that he should beware the Ides of March, Caesar not only ignores him but also forgets it until Calpurnia, his wife, reminds him that she has had a very bad dream about him. However, Caesar defers his visit to the Senate, choosing not to completely ignore his wife. Even Casca sees various omens and believes that these are the warning signs about the likely dictatorship of Caesar. The next theme that we're going to discuss is tyranny and power. Power and the use of power for establishing tyranny over the people is another significant theme of the play Julius Caesar. Two characters try to prove that Caesar has set up a tyrannical dictatorship. First Cassius, who uses flowery language to prove it and convinces his audience, and then Brutus, who sees that by getting absolute power. Caesar has become a depot. However, Cassius goes further, calling Caesar a wolf and vowing that he had known it before. He would have committed suicide instead of becoming a slave. The next theme is honor. Honor and integrity of an individual character is another major theme in the play. Shakespeare has shown it through the character of Brutus that though some people consider it an honor to help and save a friend, the only sentence that Caesar speaks about Brutus' loyalty and honor becomes a catchphrase, and it is very, very famous. I think I mentioned it. It's called Et tu, Brute. And it translates to "You too, Brutus." Brutus considers himself an honorable person who is saving Rome from a tyrant, yet he becomes a disloyal friend. Cassius too manipulates this concept and coaxes of other conspirators to join him in his fight against Caesar. However, Mark Antony has come forward by the end, and when he sees that all conspirators have killed Caesar in the name of honor, he exonerates Caesar in an ironic speech delivered to the plebeians. The last and final theme, that is the power of speech. I think most of you have known great personalities like Barack Obama, Martin Luther King Jr., about Winston Churchill, about Mahatma Gandhi, how their speeches have inspired. And as an honorable mention, I'm also going to mention Adolf Hitler as well, because his speeches actually moved the Germans and the masses against mass extinction of Jews. But still, the power of speech is still there in that aspect. So one of the secondary themes of the play is the power of speech, showing how public perceptions are subject to change by those who speak eloquently. Once Brutus is swayed, conspirators feel their ranks swelled on account of the power of speech of Cassius, who convinces all of them that they are right in killing Caesar to eliminate the tyrant, and that plebeians would be happy to get rid of him. However, once they are done, our man, Mark Antony, he comes back and he proves that he can change public opinion merely by his power of speech or by lending your ears. So what I've learned from Julius Caesar is that however righteous person you are, or how many correct things that you do, or how many good things that you do, or anything that you do that is profitable to society or you're being productive, there are always people who will backstab you and who will also be jealous of what fame or what progress you've done in life. As in the case of Brutus, he was not exactly jealous, but as Cassia and Cascus, when they coaxed, or when they convinced Brutus, saying that Julius Caesar is on the verge of tyranny or on the verge of becoming the emperor or is on the verge of being a dictator, Brutus chose Rome rather than Julius Caesar, and he was convinced to kill Julius Caesar. So I would like to say that trust is a very, very, very important key, or a very key to a relationship, and always be trustworthy to your friend, to your family member, or anything. So that is my message for you today, and I will see you next week, next Sunday, and with another episode of Shakespeare Sunday. Until then, goodbye, namaste.